was our first webinar. Since then, we have had over 25 webinars and over 1,100 people that have viewed the presentations and listened to the recordings. Even though we will start to have having in-person events in the near future, our webinar series will remain a constant within our programming efforts. So make sure you continue to follow what is happening at Purdue at Westgate. Having said that, I would like to introduce to you a new series of concentration. We are calling this webinar series Defense in Indiana. If you happen to be on this webinar and are not familiar with the Naval Support Activity Center in Crane, Indiana, or the Westgate at Crane Technology Park, which is directly outside of the base, you should do yourself a favor and research it. This support center is the third largest landlocked naval installation with anywhere to 5,000 to 6,000 employees at any given time. I won't go into any further details on the base, but you really should do yourself a favor and become acquainted with the concentrations of technologies, the Naval Surface Warfare Center being part of the Federal Laboratory Consortium for Technology Transfer, and the vast amount of talent that is currently employed, as well as the talent that they are looking forward to in the future. We at Purdue at Westgate strive to promote business and talent growth. We strive to be that regional hub of connection and support. Purdue at Westgate is located within the Westgate Academy, which is a technology incubator, training, and office conference center. It is located within the Westgate at Crane Technology Park, which is directly outside the gates of the Naval Support Activity Center in Crane, Indiana. We ask that you mute your microphones, and if comfortable, you can leave your videos on during the presentation. There will be time at the end of the presentation for questions to be asked, and we ask that you ask these questions through the conversation button on your screen. This webinar will be recorded and will be sent to you as reference as well as the presentation itself. So today we are excited to be hosting our first Defense in Indiana webinar series with 3 extremely talented employees of the Naval Surface Warfare Center. In the defense world, where an acronym is almost required, it is commonly known as NSWC. I would like to introduce to you to Rachel Wiseman, Sarah Armstrong, and Greg Bell. They are at the forefront of one of the concentrated technologies at NSWC. In October of last year, the Department of Defense established its Joint Hypersonics Transition Office System Engineering Field Activity at NSWC Crane Division. This division will allow NSWC Crane to not only develop effective hypersonic technologies, but they can also develop them affordably at the speed of the relevance of the warfighters. I'm excited to introduce you today to the individuals who are heading up this office: Rachel Wiseman, Sarah Armstrong, and Greg Bell.
All right, thank you, Samantha. We appreciate the opportunity to speak to you all. My name is Sarah Armstrong, and I am the director of the Joint Hypersonics Transition Office Systems Engineering Field Activity. Today, I'll be giving an overview of the purpose and the mission of the JHTO and the role of the Systems Engineering Field Activity in meeting the JHTO mission. So Greg, if we could go to slide 3. Oh, we need to project our slides first. Great, we can see that. Fantastic. So I'm going to talk first about the DoD Hypersonics S&T Acceleration Process. The idea here is to work to accelerate the development and insertion of hypersonics technology into the system the warfighter needs through input collection, technology assessment, and prioritization. These principles are driven by the following philosophies. The S&T investments have to be tied to a DoD need. Right now, there are finite resources in terms of facilities, people, and dollars to be able to meet the needs of the hypersonics community. We have to have investments that accelerate the development to meet the threat that is presented. We have to still allow for creativity and discovery. And the road mapping efforts that are conducted by the JHTO office are the plan to show the big picture of the prioritization of the resources to meet the identified DoD needs. All of this takes coordination and collaboration. We want to reduce redundancy in development, reduce waste and inefficiencies, making sure that we are only doing things once and doing them in the right order. We need to identify opportunities for collaboration, and eliminate the stovepipes. In some cases, this is a different approach to what is normally taken, but this is the way that we worked in a resource-constrained environment. In addition, rather than relying on our traditional performers, we're opening the aperture to tap into non-traditional performers and partners. So looking at universities, foreign allies, small businesses, and other entities that you don't normally think of in a large defense development. We're also looking for a balanced, healthy workforce. We want there to be a clear pipeline of clearable working people excited about helping the hypersonics enterprise. The JHTO was established in April of 2020, just over a year ago, to focus on meeting these goals, and this was mandated by Congress in the FY20 and FY21 NDAAs. So if we can go back to slide 2. Great, thank you. To reiterate and focus on JHTO and the efforts to support the hypersonics S&T acceleration process. The mission of JHTO is, again, to accelerate the hypersonics technology development to enable the systems the systems the warfighter needs through an integrated S&T strategy, allied and university engagement and collaboration. The University Consortium for Applied Hypersonics is our university-focused group consortium that focuses on the investment in university research on hypersonic efforts. This currently has over 100 universities and over 500 individual researchers and their teammates in industry and small business. And this builds into the workforce development efforts as well. The international efforts, we're cooperating with allies to further hypersonic development projects. And because of the forum, I'll stop there. That's some really interesting things happening there, and leveraging, again, talking about that non-traditional partnerships that I mentioned earlier. The S&T investments, the JHTO targets investments into S&T and R&D projects to mature the technologies at an accelerated pace with assistance from the systems engineering field activity, which is, of course, the main topic for today. Some examples of these are advanced concepts development, the HyFly-2 propulsion system. This is an investment in developing a missile capable of being carried by a tactical aircraft like F-18. So looking at new ways to deploy hypersonic systems. The hypersonics S&T strategy and roadmap, looking to understand the long-term vision of the hypersonics enterprise, breaking it down into programs, technologies, and understanding those key investment areas and making investments into R&D that will strategically accelerate the development of those needs. And the systems engineering field activity, as the investments are identified from the roadmap, the field activity works closely with the performing organizations and the target programs to aid in the transition from research into program integration. Next slide, please. Yep, there we go. So that gets us to the systems engineering field activity, or SEFA or SEFA, depending on what day it is and who you're talking to. The field activity was established in October of 2020, so not very long ago. Our purpose is to provide the systems engineering structure to facilitate and accelerate the insertion of technologies into the hypersonics enterprise. We're looking at all programs, offensive and defensive. To put it another way, we are here to help bridge the valley of death by pulling the technology readiness level of S&T R&D projects to the right, which is the blue line, while working with the program offices to reduce the risk of early investment, so bringing the orange line to the left. And the JHTO headquarters brings those lines up to increase the investment for the value of death, and that's all the targeted investments. So we work to ensure the projects are in alignment with the targeted programs through the project management and systems engineering. We expedite the testing and evaluation of those hypersonics technologies. We enhance the and working to enhance the current and future hypersonics workforce. The systems engineering field activity works on three primary pillars: the program operations, systems engineering and integration, and workforce development. Rachel and Greg will be talking in depth about these areas, and I'm going to hand off to Rachel right now. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Armstrong. Greg's already got us at the next slide. Perfect. Well, as Sarah said, I'm Rachel Wiseman. I'm currently dual-hatted in my crane roles. I'm the division manager over the Strategic Mission Systems Engineering Group, and I'm also the Systems Engineering and Integration Lead for the JHTO Systems Engineering field activity. So say all that 5 times fast. So Dr. Armstrong was just talking about the need for our office. So I'll talk about the why crane piece, and then move over into how we're executing our associated vision and tasking. So NSWC Crane has a rich history in systems engineering, providing related support to multiple customers in this regard for decades. And specifically as it relates to hypersonics for the Navy Hypersonics program for the past decade or so. Crane knows how to transition programs, which means we know how to move things from an R&D sphere to a tangible tactical program. Included in these capabilities are a wealth of knowledge related to various modeling and simulation tools and efforts, HWL and SWL, which is hardware and software in the loop, electro-optics and radio frequency technologies, those efforts in various SMEs, subject matter experts, and various flight test support. So these are the types of capabilities that are necessary in order to test and verify, in order to transition the technologies like Sarah was talking about. All of this knowledge and capability through people, facilities, and labs really make Crane a prime location for the JHTO systems engineering field activity, as it's this knowledge and associated process rigor and discipline from a systems engineering perspective that's necessary to help OSD transition the R&D efforts into those program of records. So if we move over into slide 6, please, Greg, we'll begin to start digging into the vision and the various tasking particulars. So as Dr. Armstrong mentioned, the overall problem that we're trying to solve is that dreaded valley of death, as it applies in this case for hypersonics technologies. So the field activity will be the conduit for this valley, bridging the hypersonics S&T community with the programs and services. So really closing the gap between technology readiness and integration readiness. The field activity will address and focus on engineering integration challenges, which can present various obstacles when trying to transition technologies, and ultimately provide an integrated suite or our pipeline of capability that is really what is needed for bridging to the services. So the JHTO S&T and then the field activity efforts plan to truly support the service program needs through early coordination regarding architectures to help ensure capabilities are developed at lower TRLs, which are technology readiness levels, being informed regarding the weapon system performance needs to ensure what is being developed will also be compatible downstream. Really can't emphasize that enough. And as part of this, obviously probably goes without saying, frequent and periodic exchanges with the program offices really are needed to help ensure everyone remains in sync. So there's a lot of collaboration happening there in parallel at various stages. So diving into the organization a bit more, if you can see there on the left-hand portion of the slide, we've bucketized this into 3 main process steps or areas. So the S&T projects, the technology readiness assessment, and transition management. So for the S&T projects, we are in the throes with the various IPTs. There's a list of those, I believe, on the next slide, but those are really kind of technology areas, things like propulsion, ordnance, navigation, guidance, control, and what have you. We also have a new IPT, kind of an overarching umbrella, the future capabilities in transition IPT, which will really help bring some of those efforts together. This really includes the process development piece to show how the S&T project selections are advancing, and then, ultimately for selection, both for fielding as well as potential, follow-on project support if it's a newer project. All of this will be based on the warfighter need and mapping the various technologies to the programs, and obviously back from the start with the various roadmaps as Sarah was talking about. So for the technology readiness assessment, this will include a tailored TRA process development. Again, that's technology readiness assessment, program office engagement, artifact and data collection. A lot of effort going on there related to authoritative source of truth, various modeling sim efforts, not creating stovepipes from reinventing the wheel, but figuring out how we can plug and play together. Obviously doing so in a safe environment from a security class perspective and other factors as well. And then ultimately, you know, this is all part of an insertion and integration plan development. The transition management piece will include, you know, the support to the program offices, as well as a plan of action and milestones for that specific technology insertion. So this is where, you know, some core tenets of the systems engineering discipline will come into play. So things like the systems engineering plan and various test and evaluation plans. If we move into the next slide, please, Greg, it will depict the notional associated timelines that we have envisioned for this process. So this slide attempts to show the vision we have with respect to that hypersonics capability transition. Essentially, it shows where the field activity fits into the technology and capability transition timeline. So for the purpose of this slide, we've got several programs that are just showed. Simply put, as program 1 to 4 and on down. Rest assured, there's real programs behind that. But basically, just to show an example of that and kind of how they flow and where their block upgrades are. And then the bottom piece are those S&T initiatives, and this is what I referenced a moment ago that shows the different IPTs, kind of how we have some of them bucketized today. So navigation, guidance, and control, some of the materials, aero, propulsion, ordnance, and several others. There's 28 S&T projects that we're helping to coordinate for this FY, and we are actually in the process of the call for next FY's S&T projects. So can't speak enough to just the process management piece of this that's the underlying current here throughout. So let's talk timelines on this chart a bit. So just for context, so the service and agencies will really lead the near-term development on this slide. So those would be the efforts that are less than 5 years. JHTO and the field activity will focus on those technologies and capabilities for transition in the midterm development timeline. So in other words, those technologies that are targeted for transition in the 5 to 12 years out sort of time frame. This is where, you know, we'd be developing the detailed maturation and transition plans for the S&T projects, utilizing midterm on-ramp opportunities for the programs and services that are aligned to their block upgrade and technology insertion plans and schedules, and also helping to define and do those checks for when various technologies reach different maturity levels. The S&T offices, so this would be the ONRs, AFSOR, DARPA, etc. Those folks will continue to identify the long-term technology opportunities. So those are the things that are in the 12 plus years out. So if we move into the next slide, kind of provide an example or kind of use case of how we think, you know, this will actually flow together, or how the different pieces and people all work in concert with one another. So again, our Bernie platform really is to build off of the S&T initiatives to proactively plan integration that meets program constraints within block upgrade schedules. So this is achieved through the help, you know, of coordinating the engineering activities to, again, account for those systems architectures, interfaces, schedules, and plans to capture and transition a modular, affordable, and upgradable hypersonics portfolio of capabilities and technologies. So this slide attempts to show how progression is achieved through the various TRL levels with efforts from the S&T technology coordination to R&D technology transition to fielded systems. So within the S&T technology coordination kind of column, if you will, there on the chart, this is where the field activity would participate and help coordinate efforts through OSD road mapping and projects, and then through the things like the UCA, which is a University Consortium for Applied Hypersonics, challenge projects, and through the IPTs that I mentioned a moment ago, their associated roadmaps and projects. From there, the efforts would advance to the R&D technology transition phase. So this is where the output of the previous phase would come in as an input, and where we would then help facilitate those S&T project metrics and assessments with S&T project reporting and closeout, and mapping into future capabilities and transition efforts. Again, the output here would be with project development, test plans and schedules, and related integration plans for related programs of interest. An additional input in this phase would be obviously from the program offices and operational stakeholders. Specifically, this means the service needs and the weapon system requirements, the various accelerated capability block upgrade plans, and interfaces and different compliance terms associated with those technologies. So from this phase, the next phase would be obviously onto fielded systems. This is where we would transition those. A lot of work with the program offices here for that final integration for a fielded capability. It is expected that this will be a cyclical and iterative process, that if we move on to the next slide, it'll graphically depict that a little bit better. So slide 9 continues again with the capability transition discussion, specifically highlighting that iterative nature I just mentioned. So if you start at the top left corner, you can see the overarching process starts with the DoD-wide hypersonics strategy, flowing down to the hypersonics S&T strategy from the JHTO office, subsequently flowing down to university grants, UCA efforts, S&T projects, and advanced concepts, which then all kick over to the first cog in the JHTO Systems Engineering Field Activity Wheel. So this is where we'll be mapping the capability needs to programs, onto defining POEMs to mature technologies, establishing those metrics I referenced a moment ago from a go, no-go perspective, and then executing those TRAs, so those technology readiness assessments. We could, I think, spend a whole day on exactly what that means and what that entails. A lot of great core systems engineering behind those efforts there for sure. And then lastly, kind of the last cog is just, onto collaborating with the programs to transition the capability technology, and then back again. So this really kind of, just puts a little bit of a pin in it from one of the main pillars, as Sarah referenced, just from a top level perspective. Here, I've been talking about the system engineering integration piece. There's another piece that's equally as important in our efforts, and that's the workforce development. Both are key tenets and ultimately being successful in the JHTO achieving its mission of transitioning technologies. So at this point, I will hand it over to Greg Bell, who will talk about our workforce development efforts.
Rachel, thank you very much. So my name is Greg Bell. I'm the workforce development lead for the field activity supporting JHTO. On the slide that you see is our talent pipeline. On the left side of the slide are some of the challenges we face. There's been a number of studies within the DoD looking at workforce, starting to understand that it's not just about the technologies, that you have to have a capable workforce to develop and field and ultimately support those systems. The takeaway in the middle there in red, that hypersonics has unique interdisciplinary needs within a very competitive STEM market. So you'll hear me talk today a lot about what we're doing for that STEM market, what we're doing as a JHTO activity. In the upper right, we have the JHTO Workforce Development Mission. JHTO has quite a few mission statements, but from workforce development, we're looking to attract, develop, and maintain a skilled technical workforce that supports DoD hypersonics. And sometimes our collaborations take us a little beyond DoD. Once again, we work with NASA and some others for a possibility of where we can align efforts, once again, for the type of technologies that are transportable between the two different organizations. So we basically have developed a framework that goes after that and has goals that ties into those 3 key words. We want to attract STEM students into related fields. We then want to be able to develop that knowledgeable workforce. And a lot of that development is the education pipeline when we talk about things like the UCA, some of the coursework that they will be developing and helping work. And our focus is what we call full spectrum. It's from technicians to PhDs. So when we're looking at applied research, we're thinking high education PhD type individuals. But ultimately, as those technologies transition into programs of records, we need manufacturing. We need support technicians, who can maintain and sustain those systems. So we're looking with that full wide spectrum of needs. And then also we want to maintain an agile and adaptive workforce. which includes our current workforce. New technologies does not mean we need all new workforce individuals. Some people just need to have some educational improvements for the new technologies just to get up to speed on what we're doing. And so once again, that's one of our focuses. Like I said, for today, I mostly be talking though about what we're doing with the STEM area, just focusing in because I could probably talk for an hour on workforce. So our strategic framework, if you see the graphic on the right, you'll see an overarching circle which has some of the major players. From JHTO, the main office. We have an oversight committee at OSD. We have the Department of Defense, once again, the requirements. The defense industry base, once again, looking at the full spectrum that ultimately, how do we manufacture and support these weapon systems? And then other US government entities. You'll see within the inner circles, they come under the education initiatives, things like STEM, leveraging existing STEM and looking to expand that. In the middle, the University Consortium, we can't say enough about from a workforce perspective. The UCA is a large player for JHTO. Once again, align career pathways, and then that's their business with education, developing curriculum. So that's very exciting on what's going on with the UCA currently. And part of that, and in possibly extending on into industry consortium. Right now, the industry has committees as part of the UCA. So we're not just looking at academic, we're looking at what are the industry needs. Putting a plug in today that there is on the UCA for members, there's a spring forum coming up and we'll be announcing some surveys from the field activity and UCA that will be going out to gain information, the data, so that we're using data-driven decisions, that we're not just arbitrarily making decisions, that we're collecting data. And part of that is an industry needs data. So I don't want just the top tier industries, you know, the Boeings and the Lockheeds. I need to know those lower level tiers. So if you're one of those companies and you're listening today and you are part of the UCA or you are thinking about becoming part of the UCA, on the 19th, in the week of the 19th, there's some information that'll be out. And like I said, surveys that we're be looking for some just basic information of what technology areas, what education areas are you looking for in your future workforce needs. If you look on the left side are some of the key elements. Once again, the promote recruiting and training as well as retention. You know, we have to attract quality individuals. We need to train them, and then we also need to keep them. So we're looking at that aspects, both from the DoD and the industrial base. Once again, we're staying tied to the roadmaps and the 6 technology focus areas. Once again, as JHTO, I'm not trying to solve all of DoD's workforce. I'm really focused on the hypersonic related technologies. Part of that is career path development, making sure we have career paths for the new folks and generating interest in those career paths. And that goes from all levels, trades to PhDs, as I've mentioned before. Making sure I didn't miss something on my notes here. When we look at collaborative cross-flow of information, one of the roles within workforce is to go out and find what other individual pockets of information is out there, who is doing things within the workforce development initiative. And those things can be items like internships. We're looking for, once again, curriculum that is geared directly towards hypersonic related technologies. Short courses, very good for the current workforce to go back and speed up, get up to speed on a specific area or technology area within hypersonics. Once again, we're data driven, so we have metrics that we're looking to assess. One of the tools we want to use is leveraging existing military and our existing workforce who may already be working within these realms and seeing as they transition, making sure they understand that there's opportunities. And of course, as always, we want to assess and review for continuous improvement what we're doing. Some examples of the STEM, what the field activity is doing locally here in Indiana. There is a program called the National Defense and Education Program, or NDEP. And one of the things they recently had out was a call for proposals. And JHTO was able to endorse or support one of those proposals. It was an NSWC STEM coordinator, and was to work with a local Purdue to develop some curriculum for middle and high school students, once again, to generate interest and support that STEM community. Like I said, once again, example of collaborative and reaching across the entire national network, NDEP being a large national organization, and JHTO would be able to endorse the local, and that's because of our relationships. Like I said, it was for a proposed pilot that would use teachers and residents to develop curriculum. So we're always looking for opportunities like this, and we'll continue in the future. There's also an organization called the National Security Innovation Network, or NSIN, and that allows collaboration between universities. If you're familiar with the DoD's SMART scholarship program, that's run by NSIN. And they also do other things. And one of the examples is called an experts program, which allows colleges and universities to partner with DoD organizations. We create need statements, and then it's kind of sourced out, and then those university individuals, those professors, will come back and offer their time to work with us on those projects and those need statements. A couple examples here, Dr. Goyner from the Indiana University School of Business, very talented lady in the talent acquisition, strategy and assessment areas. So once again, she's working with us currently on an area that we're looking for attracting students into the STEM program. And she's worked with us before. We've had a webinar on talent management. Once again, some of the new trends with the new generation of how we need to not only attract, but to keep the new, and we've done that through the experts program. Like I said, it's just an example of the collaborative cross-flow. One of the things we're very excited about is a social media challenge. So this is much like the UCA. This was a pilot program consortium out of the University of Tennessee Space Institute, which is now moving into or part of UCA. And the University of Virginia is hosting it. And this still has opportunities. So if you have a high school or a college student, especially the high school students, there's an opportunity to create a 2-minute video on hypersonics for YouTube, basically. And there's cash as well as bragging rights available for the winners. So the due date for these has been extended, and it ends on April 18th. So there's still a few days to hurriedly put together a video and submit your entries, but I'll put a plug in for it. This is an example where the social media challenge, where we're reaching out to high school students, getting them thinking about hypersonic flight, how it could help humanity in the future. And it's really just getting them interested in the technologies. A lot of times when they think hypersonics, they think weapons only, and they turns off. But there's a lot of materials and aero. If you notice the college in the middle, what's one of the big challenges? Preventing hypersonic flight from becoming an everyday reality. If we go back through aviation, it was the speed of sound, breaking that sound barrier. And out of that came the supersonic transport, which is no longer in work. That once again was transcontinental aircraft. So hypersonic related flight, not just for weapon systems, but how do we transition? Those kind of things that we want them to think about that would stir their excitement, their interest, to get them into the hypersonic related technologies. And that might be materials, as well as, like I said, advanced, someone who's interested in aerodynamics and high speed, and all those challenges that go with it. There's a paragraph towards the end of this that kind of sums it up really well. It talks about the goal is to encourage high school and college students to consider exciting careers in hypersonics. That's really the focus. And this is just one of the tools that the workforce development team is doing. Part of the collaboration or the consortium that's put this on, UTSI and the University of Virginia. Purdue is part of that. They're part of that. And once again, as their current effort winds down, they're transitioning that. That's been a pilot that we will now leverage, and UCA will pick up, and they'll become part of the UCA group and continue that type of work, hopefully in the future. And so put a plug in if you're looking for someone who might be interested in this video challenge, you can Google Needs for Speed Video Challenge. You can go to the UCA website, which is hypersonics.tamu.edu. You can look at the resources and students pages, tabs there to find information as well about this. And I believe that's all I have currently for workforce. Once again, it's a big opportunity, a lot of work going on. And with that, I'll transition back to Sarah and Rachel.
Okay, thank you, both of you. Great information. Just in a few words in closing here, I hope that everybody heard that there's a huge challenge in what we're doing, but a lot of opportunity. So to meet the stated goals of the JHTO, we are looking at unprecedented coordination across all aspects of the hypersonics development in the community. The field activity in particular must earn the trust of everyone involved to ensure the technologies get into the right systems at the right time while protecting the IP and navigating the cultures of the programs. What we need from you is keep your eyes open for collaboration opportunities and potential efficiencies. Just keep an eye open for the engagement opportunities that are upcoming. Rachel mentioned a few of those, and I think there are some more things on the horizon. We all, again, just to foot stomp this a little bit, we have to work together to make this happen. So just keep your eyes and heart open to thoughts and suggestions for collaboration down the road. And we are looking forward to working with you all. That's all I had. Great. Rachel, you have anything in closing?
Just appreciate this forum. You know, we don't get a lot of opportunity to talk outside of maybe the completely all government and support contractor sphere. So it's nice to be able to get the message out there. And obviously there's a, you know, personally the huge tie from a regional embrace and economic development perspective as well for those opportunities and collaboration like we've been talking about that hits home on a personal front as well. So happy to take the time to talk with some of our local as well as national folks on the team too.
Great. Well, thank you very much. We are very appreciative that the JHTO team was able to provide this presentation to us. A lot of good information that we outside of the fence may not know or may not have known that's been happening. I do believe, I know Greg had mentioned that he could talk workforce all day, and I do believe we are scheduling kind of a part 2 hypersonics workforce development in the June timeframe, so stay tuned for that. We also want to thank IN3. They are a sponsor of our April webinar series. If you want to go to in3indiana.com, you'll be able to see that they do have an emphasis on hypersonics as well, so they are a potential resource that you can take a look at too. So again, we just want to thank everybody for joining us. Look for more Defense in Indiana webinar series. The copy of this presentation and the recording will be sent to you. And I believe they had a resource page that will have the email information in case you wanted to ask questions to them directly. So again, thanks everyone for participating, for attending, and hopefully we'll see people in some more in-person events in the near future. Thank you, Rachel, Sarah, and Greg.
Thanks, everybody.